This episode is brought to you by the TOC newsletter. Every Thursday, our newsletter includes two things you don't want to miss out on. Firstly, the notes to that week's podcast episode. Whether you're listening while driving the car, out for a run, or doing the dishes, we don't want you to miss the biggest takeaways from each episode. Secondly, each newsletter is a short article from myself or Nate on leadership and culture. These articles are designed to inspire, encourage, and provide practical insights into leadership and culture building. Our content is a perfect fit for anyone who wants to stay up to date with the latest trends and insights in culture building. You can subscribe to the newsletter at tocculture.com or by clicking on the link in the details of each episode. So in our last episode of the podcast, we talked with head coach Dusty May about how he built FAU into the Final Four team it was this year. If you missed it, be sure to go back and have a listen. Today's episode is the second half of our conversation, and we're going to go back in time with Dusty and learn how he became the coach he is today, what that journey was like, and then we're going to talk about the future. He just turned down a lot of opportunities to go to bigger programs and make a lot more money. He turned those down for a 10-year deal to stay at Florida Atlantic University. Very few coaches would do that, and it's a testament to his character as a coach, but also as a human being. It's one of the many ways he lives by his principles. In fact, knowing and anticipating his future success, I remember asking him last summer if opportunities came up, would he ever leave FAU? And he told me, no, he wouldn't, for the very same reasons that he shares with us in today's episode. Which is why when the announcement came out last month that he was deciding to stay, not only was he deciding to stay, but agreed to additional 10 years at FAU, I was really excited for him, his family, and his team. Lastly, in this episode, we're going to talk about how he plans to continue to sustain success, grow as a leader, and continue to develop the culture he has built at FAU for years to come. Welcome to the Coaching Culture Podcast. I'm your host, JP Nurbin, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host, Nate Sanderson. The mission of this podcast is to help you become a better leader and build a better culture. In addition to this podcast, I'm the founder of TOC, which provides one-on-one coaching and consulting for leaders. Learn more about us at tocculture.com. This episode is brought to you by my latest book, The Culture System, A Proven Process for Creating an Extraordinary Team Culture. It's been endorsed by many exceptional leaders and coaches, one of those being 2022 NBA Coach of the Year, Monty Williams, who called it a special book with inspiring stories, applicable strategies, and a proven model for developing team culture. This book is more than just a collection of practical tools for leaders. It teaches a proven framework that some of the world's best organizations and teams use. It's packed with real-life examples and case studies that show you how these ideas can be implemented in any context. Whether you're a coach, manager, or leader, you'll find invaluable insights to help you build the culture you want. Don't miss out on this opportunity to transform your team. Visit myculturesystem.com to learn more about the book, or you can get your copy on Amazon or Audible today.
Let me ask you this question from a high school basketball perspective here. Those of us that haven't been at the college level, but have seen just the ever-changing ground, with the portal, the NIL money, the transient nature of the conferences, it just seems like there's this constant shifting foundation in college basketball. And I can't imagine the challenges that presents. Each one of those variables by itself, but all of them seeming to happen at the same time, over the last few years in college basketball, without necessarily getting into all the politics of is this good or bad for the game. But I'm curious, how do you approach so much change year in and year out, and try to navigate that to position your program to be as good as it can be, given all the changes that are occurring seemingly simultaneously?
It's almost impossible, Nate. There's, we almost just have to kind of accept things are what they are. And, you're spending all year trying to make sure you're giving your guys the best learning environment, the best short-term, long-term solution for their careers and who they are. And you just hope that they think that this is the best place for them right now. And then also with our state laws, we can help with NIL. So we can't just say, hey, that there's NIL, where now when I go out to eat and a manager comes out to say, hello, hey, coach, is there anything we can do for the program? You can say, hey, man, it'd be really cool if our guys, could contribute in the NIL space or whatever things like that. So we have so many more jobs now than simply coaching basketball. And that's something that I'm having to learn and grow, because it's, I'm not great at delegating at times. And so now we have to figure out, uh, well, I guess some coaches like a new roster and they like to recruit and they like to bring in new guys. And if a guy's not quite what he thought, move him out and move a new guy in. Where we're a little bit we're a little bit different, where we take, if we sign a player that's not as good as we thought, well, it's our job to get them up to speed and work with them and invest in them. So I think everyone's so different. We haven't attacked the portal like a lot of guys. We've had very few leave. We've had very few come in through the portal. And when we have, it's been the guys that were, there's a great opportunity for them to play. It was going to be hard for them not to be successful. Now there's no guarantee, but it was a plug and play situation. And fortunately, I think because of the way our players are treated and the quality of life they have here, despite we don't have the best this or the best that, most of them have stayed when they had other options. And that's probably one of the things we're most proud of. Despite our guys have a lot of other options, they've chose to stay here and do it with us. So I think every program is different. That's the way we've embraced it. But we also have to stay flexible and liquid, where at the drop of a hat, you may have to go find another player and go through a speed dating process. So there's no downtime. The day the season ended, we're back the next morning, and it's 90 miles an hour nonstop. And that's how it is. And that's probably why a lot of guys say it's a young man's game now.
Well, I just so much respect for how you have the courage just to continue to stay grounded in who you are as a coach and how you want to do things. I was actually talking to Dave Brandt, who just took over at Bucknell, their soccer program there. And I've written about him in my book, and he was on our podcast before. He's a phenomenal coach, and he's just saying it takes a lot of courage in this current landscape to continue to do things the way you think they should be done, because there's just a lot of challenges out there. And I'm curious, you've mentioned earlier your decision to stay at FAU, and you expressed to that reporter, and you told me, even I think it was about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, that you really liked where you're at, and you saw yourself staying there long term. But I'm sure there were some very lucrative offers, not just financially, but like facilities and all the other things that they could have thrown at you to make that jump and to leave. But what was the big reason for you staying as a coach there at FAU?
Ultimately, it's the people. Absolutely love our players, love our staff, love the administration. And a building's not that hard to leave. I left University of Florida. We had an amazing practice facility. Our offices were great. To be a head coach here and to take on this challenge. So the people are the hardest thing to leave. Our players have sacrificed so much. They did everything that make this a dream season for a coach. So I don't know if there's any amount of money that would have caused us to want to leave. And then because of our run went so long, there was never even 30 seconds to process and think about something else, because we were so locked in and enjoying the moment, knowing that this group and this chemistry this could be once in a lifetime, where we all are completely in synergy the way we were this year, that there's no way I'm going to wreck this worrying about some other stuff or even entertaining other things. So it was never hard. I'm not motivated by money, so the money never drove me for something different. And by nature, it takes me a while to develop real relationships. So, you come to a place and you finally get to know your children's parents, and you get to know all these people on campus. And if it naturally takes you a while as a human to do that, why then go reset and then have to start over with relationships again? So I think all those things rolled into one. Just caused us all just to be really happy and content here.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think it comes down to knowing who you are. You mentioned that. And I want to kind of spend the last part of our conversation today talking about you as a leader, how you grow, you're how you kind of developed yourself before you finally got that head coaching role. And I guess I'd start with this question, which is, before you became a head coach and you're doing all these assistant jobs from Indiana to USC, all over the place, how were you preparing? Because I know you were already preparing for that one day that you'd become a head coach. What did that look like for you?
Well, I was obsessed with the details of the game and becoming the most knowledgeable I could be. And I worked for some really great coaches. So that was easy to steal, adopt, and think. And then I think when I went to work for Coach White at Louisiana Tech, he was really open and honest about what he was thinking at all times. And unless you're in this seat, you can't even fathom how much information there is to process and how many decisions there are. The decision fatigue is real. So he was really open. And I don't know if it's because of our friendship and our close relationship, but he was open about his insecurities. He was open with all the things he was thinking as a first-time head coach, as a second-year head coach. Then you start winning, and he shares his insecurities with what's going on in his head as you're winning championships. So I feel like that always helped me think about the process of being not very good to good, then really, really good. And even how there's always, you may not feel like you're good enough. You may not feel like you're ready. You may not feel like you're prepared for this situation. So I think him sharing his vulnerabilities really opened my eyes to be thinking about more than just what you're going to run or what defense or how you're going to recruit or what you're going to say in the living room and in-home visit. I think all those things really accelerated my growth and made me think about the things that would help me become a head coach.
When you stepped into that job and slid over 18 inches into the big chair with the nice forearms and the padded back and all that stuff, was there confidence issues when you haven't been in that seat before? I mean, how did you, I don't know if courage is the right word, but if you haven't had that experience, and as you mentioned, the first couple years, maybe been a little bit of a slow start at FAU, like how did you try to manage and build your confidence through that experience?
I was confident in the teaching part and the coaching part. There was never any insecurities once we got on the floor of what are the guys thinking? Can I do this? I had done that. I'd spent so much time learning, growing, and I'd worked for guys that gave us the leeway to teach and to try new things and experiment and always give feedback as opposed to criticism. Well, it's the same thing depending on how it's received. But anyway, so it was more of the imposter syndrome of, can I do this whole thing? It was like, am I good enough? This job is going to be really hard. We're really down now. And as coaches, you're what are your friends going to be saying when you're bad? What do you like if you have a terrible season? What are your peers going to be saying about you behind your back? And all these things creep in, and then you just have to catch yourself and say that none of that stuff matters. All that matters is what I'm doing to help and improve and all those things. So there was the pieces never. There was never any fear of could I do this or do that. It was always just the overall. Am I good enough to do this job? And if I'm not, what have I done to my career? And it's all selfish, self-centered stuff that we're asking our players to put faith in the team and not worry about themselves. So the first couple of years, the one saying that got me through was it's not about you. So anytime those crazy thoughts would creep in my head, I'd say it's not about me. And usually that would recenter me, refocus what's important, and then go on doing what needed to be done, as opposed to worrying about what others were thinking of me. And usually they're not thinking about you anyway. That's what we learn as teenagers, or that once you get past to being a teenager, you learn that people aren't thinking about you near as much as you think they are.
When you made that transition, you mentioned before that, as a head coach, and I'm sure it's even more at your level compared to being a high school coach, you have to wear all these different hats, and there's all these sort of ancillary responsibilities that don't actually have that much to do with what's going on the floor. When you think about all those different hats that you have to wear, are there some as the head coach now that you've found you've really enjoyed, or some maybe they're like, this is something I've had to learn to do, even though maybe it isn't something that I looked forward to when I became a head coach?
Yeah, all the parts of coaching the team I love and I look forward to, and I love practice and workouts and planning. It's the stuff now we've made the run that we've made, and now there are a lot of people that want your time that didn't before. So that's been the biggest challenge of where do you draw the line, because you still have to do what you did to get to this point, but you also want to continue to grow your program and help the players and help the coaches. And so it's that daily battle that, you never know if you're doing the right, we only have an infinite amount of time. Are you spending your time on the right stuff? And that's become a lot harder since the tournament's been over.
Yeah. And I just remember you guys going in towards the Final Four, and I just remember shooting you a text like, this is going to be the hardest time, like, because people are going to want a million media interviews. You're going to have a million texts, and you're going to feel this obligation, to give people that time for sure. I've got a question for you. It's obviously there's no doubt about what my take is on Coach Bobby Knight's style of coaching, but what impact did working for Coach Knight have on you as a coach?
It was all positive with me. And even my high school coach was like Coach Knight. My junior high coaches were like Coach Knight. And it's times change, eras change. I do think that back then, a lot of men served in the military. There was a military background with a lot of coaches, Coach Knight, West Point. And so, you didn't think anything of that behavior then, where times are a lot different now. All the lessons that were so important, though, as far as preparation, thinking ahead, staying on your toes. And then, when the guys were done with Coach Knight, they saw how much he loved them after the fact. And sometimes it's like that as a parent, where you're butting heads with your teenager, or you're butting heads with your college student, but as soon as that period passes, they realize that you were doing it out of love, and I took everything positive. I know the media had this image and whatnot, and obviously he made mistakes. We all make mistakes, but overall, you could see how much he really cared for people as people, and he made everyone better. I should say he made almost everyone better that was around him.
And I think that's a testament to you, because you obviously have evolved. If anybody watches you coach on the sideline, it doesn't look like Bobby Knight or a lot of the other old school coaches, right? I think one question I've loved asking coaches lately, and just leaders in general, is how do you work on your job when you're not doing your job? And I think it's a great reflection on just that being in the job and then working on the job, and how we coach, how we teach is different, right? It's just experience, doesn't necessarily lead to learning and growth. You know that. And I think you're very intentional in your growth. You're a learner. What does that look like for you? How do you work on your job when you're not doing your job?
Well, number one, just I think paying attention to how people respond to certain things. So I was like that. I was a little fiery Irish guy yelling and screaming at the players, and I realized that they didn't enjoy it, and I didn't enjoy it either. So just I think the self-awareness piece, but you read to try to pick up nuggets to help your players. You're studying the game to continue to be proficient in what you do. It's not hard for me. Someone made the comment about how hard I worked or whatever that worked with me, and I don't look at watching film as an off-season project as oh man, I'm in here grinding. Like, yes, it's work, but I also enjoy it. I enjoy reading leadership books. I enjoy listening to your podcast. When I'm doing yard work, I'm listening to your podcast and Chris Oliver's podcast and Malcolm Gladwell's podcast. And I don't look at it as I'm in here working. I'm in the lab to get better, to help our guys. Now, I'm trying to take things to help our guys, but I enjoy it because I'm curious by nature and I love to learn. And if I'm learning every day, then I feel like I got something done, even if I didn't check a lot of boxes.
What's your process from taking things that you consume, because there's so much information out there? How do you weed through all the great stuff and the great content and all of JP and Nate's and Chris's 3,000 episodes of podcasts? How do you take that and say, hey, this is what I can actually do? What's that process like for you?
Highlight it as you're reading it, and then or listening to it, and then write it down. And then usually when you write it down, you're encoding it in your brain. And then after you do that, then I put it on usually my notes that I want to refer back to later, and then try to organize the notes that this is something we'll use in next season, or this is something that will go under development, or whatever the case. And then that way you can refer back to it. But usually if you read it, then highlight it and then write it down, it's usually pretty much, if you're going to refer back to it, your brain can recall it pretty quickly. And then if not, then, usually try to spend 1 week out of the year where I'll spend an hour or two a day just reading old notes and old thoughts and old journals. And usually that spurs some thought. And then once again, that stuff becomes back to the surface. But the information overload is definitely real. But it's, you hope you can take all this information and apply certain pieces to where you are at that moment in your journey.
Yeah, I love that answer, because it's similar to my process. I mean, just before we hopped on this podcast, I was taking this book I was just reading and just typing up my highlights there. And I'm like, it's a very long, arduous process, but it is actually the only way that I feel like I can actually really retain what I'm trying to learn and within that book. I think one of the things that impresses me is your your emotional state during games, no matter what happens, high or low. And I'm sure it's the same in practice. And like, obviously we all have moments where we lose it, we snap, but I think you actually view yourself as a performer as well as not just your players. Like, I mean, we are performers as coach. We have to be able to make the right play calls. We got to be able to make the right substitutions. We have to be in a right emotional state that optimal emotional state, for the good of our team. What do you do to take care of yourself to make sure that you can be at your best because the demands on your time are so high? Essentially, what's that self-care look like for you as a leader in season as well as out of season?
I think just me being conscious of I see the game better. I can help if I'm being calm and my eyes are quiet, my mind is quiet. I can help our players. Now, fortunately for us, we have a team that plays really, really hard. So I don't have to bring energy. I don't have to bring enthusiasm. They naturally play like that, or that's become who they are. And so I feel like I can really just process information. I can take a step back like teachers do in their classroom and watch, observe, and interject when I could help. And I don't feel like, at year 5, I don't feel like I have to be talking just to be talking. I don't feel like I have to be putting on a show for someone else to see. Our like John Wooden, our teaching is done in practice, and when they're performing, you want your guys to perform. And so I've come a long way with that, but also because our guys play so hard, it's helped me because I don't have to bring energy and enthusiasm and juice to the equation. Therefore, I can see things from a different perspective because I'm much more calm. Where if I'm energetic and I'm clapping and I'm trying to bring energy, then I don't see the game very well. I can't take a step back and see the big picture.
That's a great answer. Two other quick ones here for you. What have you changed your mind on recently?
She put me on the spot. It's not hard to get me to change my mind.
Mhm.
We change the details of the game. We change on recruiting. One saying we have that, in the off season we recruit talent and length and those things, and then in the season we recruit toughness and intelligence and day to day approach and guys that have a great attitude and are positive and consistent. So, right now we end the season and it's just trying to continue to remember why we loved coaching this group so much. And let's do everything we can to duplicate that. And if our talent's not quite good enough, then we're fine with that. We'll keep chasing and hunting it, but let's make sure that we know how we're at our best. And let's make sure we try to duplicate that as far as something that jumps out that we just changed our mind on. I don't know off the top of my head what specifically, because we do it so frequently. I change my mind a lot.
Okay. And you might have kind of already answered this question, but what have you doubled down on as far as in your leadership in the last year here?
Double down on character and consistency and approach like a curious learning environment, and we're all going to improve.
This episode is brought to you by the Culture System online training platform. It's the ultimate resource for coaches who want to become more transformational and build winning team cultures. Whether you're just starting out or looking to take your coaching to the next level, our one-of-a-kind online training platform is designed to help you learn the Culture System framework at your own pace. Through this course, I'll share with you the proven methods, tools, and strategies used by some of the best teams and organizations in the world. You'll get access to customizable digital tools and a group chat to engage with experienced coaches and apply the 4-part framework throughout your season. With the Culture System online training, you'll be inspired and transformed through the stories and lessons of real leaders who've successfully applied these methods and tools within their organizations. You'll gain a deeper commitment to transformational coaching and be equipped with the tools and strategies you need to build a great team culture. To get access to this course today, simply go to tocculture.com and click on the online course tab, or click on the link provided in the details of this episode. Don't miss this opportunity to become a more transformational coach and take your team to the next level with the Culture System online training platform.
Well, Dusty, we'll get you out of here on this question. The spring sometimes can be a challenging time for coaches that go through difficult seasons. And, I think unfortunately in the nature of the business that JP and I are in, a lot of times we field those text messages and those phone calls of coaches that they went through it with their parents, they were battled with their players, they encountered resistance. And so many coaches, I think, especially the ones that are listening to this podcast, are committed to trying to do it the right way for the right reasons. And as you know, there's just more and more resistance to that from all kinds of different areas, in coaching. So what would you say to a coach maybe that's teetering on, is it worth coming back? And thinking through, am I really having the effect as a coach? I mean, how do you speak into that situation about the value of having a coach in a young person's life that's really trying to do it the right way for the right reasons?
Well, I think with coaches, just like parenting, we don't see the fruits of our labor until after the fact. So if you really believe in what you're doing, and you know what kind of, typically we're coaching the way that it had an impact on us. But as far as should I come back or not, I mean, we toiled in mediocrity for 4 years. I mean, our last year, I felt like we had a 23-25 win team that won 19 games. At one point, we were the second most unlucky team in the country as far as the metrics. And you just feel like, man, we're doing everything we can and we just can't get over the hump. And for FAU standards, we're still doing, it was the second best season in the history of the school, but it was our internal expectations. And it was just stay the course, keep trying to get better, keep doing what you're doing, only do it better. And then there's going to be a breakthrough moment, because we thought our breakthrough moment was last year, and it wasn't. I mean, we had a good year. We finished tied for second in Conference USA East. So all signs pointed towards a good year, but we felt like we underachieved with our group. So it didn't feel like a good year. But because of that, getting to that verge, we're teetering on that verge, and that gave us confidence that if we just come together a little bit more, we're so close. And there's just these moments that everything clicks. Our moment was probably after we lost Ole Miss, and that's when we really started coming together. And so we're all just one moment away from taking off. And that momentum, that feeling of everybody clicking, you don't know when it's happening, but when it does happen, we're all on the verge of taking off, unless there's just a talent discrepancy. So, I've talked to a couple friends this offseason about that. Like, man, I was in the same position you were in last year, and we didn't add a McDonald's All-American. We didn't add an NBA player. Everyone got a little bit better. We all pulled in the same direction. And we had our breakthrough moment with basically the same guys that won 19 games last year. So we went from 19 to 35, essentially with the same exact team. And so I think everybody's, right there, that, there's a breakthrough. You just don't know when it's going to happen.
Yeah, that's great encouragement for coaches. Thank you so much for your time, Dusty. I'm sure you've got probably a few other interviews. You got Part of the Eruption on later today. Is that what you're on next? Or have you gotten an invite to PTI yet?
No, not PTI. The one on Barstool Sports, pardon this something. I was on that. So I didn't know what it was. My kids were impressed.
Oh man. Well, I'll be
too much time on Barstool Sports or whatnot. But yeah. And then even the morning show, Get Up, a friend said, hey, do you want to go on Get Up in the morning? And I just, yes. And I said, hey, what's Get Up? And they said, that's like the biggest show on in the mornings. That's like Sports Center when you're growing up. Because I don't watch TV in the mornings. I really don't watch TV at all anymore. And then I was like, when I got to sit, I was like, wow, okay, this is a big deal when RG3 sitting over here and Mad Dog and Woj and all those guys are sitting around. So yeah, but it's happened fast. It's been awesome, but I also do miss anonymity and a normal life.
Well, you're just slumming it with us today, man. So, thanks for coming back here.
Go home with my guy.
There you go, man. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, guys.
All right. A huge thanks to Dusty. He's been more than gracious, not only with his time in recording today's episode, but in his gratitude for the small role that I've played in their program. And I assure you, it's really been all him and his staff. They are a first-class organization. I want to share just a few thoughts on today's episode. First off, I think you are seeing two different approaches to coaching in collegiate sports in America, and I am sure there are connections in other sports at other levels around the globe. Some leaders are just looking to stockpile talent. In college basketball, they want to use the transfer portal to get talent quickly. But Dusty is building a program by staying consistent with the players he's bringing in. He wants to keep the right players and does that by treating them the right way. Some other great advice from Dusty today was, do not let your ego get in the way of your growth. That can be such a problem for us as leaders. I know for years, anybody who tried to tell me if there was a better way of doing something than the way that I was currently doing it would make me defensive. I would think they were telling me I was a bad coach. Dusty May was not a bad coach 2 years ago, but he knew he could get better, which is why he reached out to me and others. And the result is he did get better. He is intentional in his coaching. He's working on it. He is always evolving as a coach, learning from others, taking notes on what he reads, and then thinking about how to implement it. And he's not afraid to reach out to other coaches or people like myself. In fact, I know he's a huge fan of Doug Lemoff, who authored the book, The Coach's Guide to Teaching. Doug Lemoff's coaching experience is limited, and his background is largely in soccer, but he knew he could learn a lot from him because he's an expert in teaching. Another thing was listening to him, I recognized you're very fortunate if you don't view working on your coaching as work. Like if you don't see working to get better as work, I think that's an amazing place to be. I'm not always there as a person, but I've definitely gotten better at that. At the end of the day, I don't think anything Dusty does is magical. And I think you would agree after listening. There's nothing massively different he does than many of the other amazing coaches we've had on this podcast. He values people, values character, wants consistency in his program, takes ownership of everything in the program, and works to continuously improve himself as a leader. And he's been fortunate to have a breakthrough season this last year. All right, that's it for today's episode. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Leave us a review if you think it earned a great rating, and share this episode with 3 other people who will find value in it.